Let's analyze this. So, ESPN recently did a feature, sort of a feature, more of an interview, from their Outside the Lines program, interviewing WWE Hall of Famer and arguably the greatest commentator, not just in the history of professional wrestling, but in the history of sports and as a whole, good old JR, Jim Ross. In this interview, it seems as if they're going to be covering his retirement, and his thoughts and explanations on that. I believe Jim Ross is now, I want to say he's almost 67 now, because I know that if Randy Savage if he was still alive, they would be the same age. And I want to say around 67. One of you peeps can correct me if I'm wrong, but let's see what he has to say.
We are pleased to welcome in Hall of Fame wrestling announcer Jim Ross, sporting the Sooner attire. I'm so impressed. I got to ask you, where do you think Kyler Murray's going to go in the draft?
I hope he goes #1. I think he's the best. He's the most exciting young quarterback that come out of the draft or come in the draft in years. So I saw him every game he ever played in person. So I hear at OU.
Okay.
And he's amazing. He really is. Instinctually, the 4-3 quarterbacks don't come along, and he has the ability to extend plays. Great arm, hell of an athlete. He was born for this opportunity.
I am not surprised to see you taking this position at all, Jim. Not surprised at all. Let me ask you, your career, this announcement, why are you stepping away now?
Well, Ryan, 2 years ago this month, actually, the 23rd of March, I lost my wife in a car accident about 30 seconds from our garage in Norman.
Let me just say that, wow, I cannot believe that it's been 2 years since Jan died. Or Jan was pretty much accidentally killed. Wow. I remember when I found out, I knew that it was going to be rough for him. I believe they had been married for about 30 years, if not more than that. And I was very surprised that he was working throughout the couple to a few months after her passing. But then I thought about it, and I said, you know what? He's probably working to try to keep his head on straight, to keep his sanity. The last thing he would want to do is be home by himself, because for the last 25, 30 plus years, whenever he was home, he would spend it with Jan. And I knew that if he were to be home alone, it just wouldn't be good for him. So I'm actually glad that JR continued working while going through the whole situation around her death. So I just wanted to say props to JR for that.
She got ran over by a young man that obviously wasn't paying attention to his driving, and I
believe he might have been drunk too. I think he was drunk.
There's no grieving manual that I've ever read or been recommended to that tells you how to get through this stuff. All I know is you got to keep getting up, and you got to keep taking steps forward. But I miss her being around people. The main reason I'm leaving WWE is because...
Before he explains his departure from WWE, let me just say, it is very difficult to move on. So the last thing you would want to do is to push somebody to try to move on and constantly get in their ear and yell and bicker, hey, move on, move on, move on, get over it, get over it. Because to me, there's really no such thing as getting over it or moving on, especially when it comes to a tragic accident like that. So the best thing to do is move forward as opposed to moving on. Because to me, I feel like moving on, that just means that forget this person. Literally forget this person that you spent over a quarter of your life with. Fuck that. Fuck them. Get over it. So to me, I get bothered when people say move on. I think that the correct term is move forward. And I give props to JR for that.
They weren't using me very much, and I feel like I've got some great years left. I needed to get out of the house, and I needed to be involved. I need to be on the road. I need to be around people. And so the main reason I left, I had no issues. I wasn't mad at anybody. There's no major controversy here. Just the fact that I believe WWE in general, as most television producers do, want to get younger. But I've been around.
I'm just going to say this before he continues. I recently went back, and I believe this might have been the last, not the last event that JR has called for the WWE. I don't think it is, but it was, I think it was actually the first event that he called when he came back. This was in 2017. It was NXT TakeOver Chicago, the first one. And of course, for that event, you had Tyler Bate defending the United Kingdom Championship against the Bruiserweight Pete Dunne. JR called that match. I recently just watched that match back, I want to say a couple of weeks ago. And listening to JR call that match, you could tell that he was very, he was still good, because all-time greats are still going to find some sort of way. They're going to have their good moments. Like, the whole moment might not be good, them calling the match might not be good, but they still find a way in spurts. So say what you will about Undertaker over the last several years, and I have said many, things about Taker. It's not so much in a positive light, about how he should have retired years ago, and he's completely screwed up how he should have went out. Because he's missed out on like 3 occasions to ceremoniously, perfectly retire, and he screwed it up by coming back. But anyway, say what you will about Undertaker, he still has good moments during the matches. Even though the match as a whole, from start to finish, is trash, in between, at some point, he still has good moments. Whereas, like, wow, it's amazing that he can even still move, let alone wrestle a little bit. And I felt the same way about JR in terms of the TakeOver Chicago when he called that match. He was very rusty, and you could tell that him being older, it had an effect on him calling the match. But he was still very solid at the end of the day.
Since the mid-70s, doing this job that I truly loved doing. So when I was unable to get booked and to be utilized, I had to look for Plan B. And so Plan B was, let's step away gracefully. Vince McMahon and his family have been amazing to my family.
You know, you mentioned the relationship's great with Vince McMahon.
Yeah, amazing to your family, but not to you.
You also mentioned on your podcast that maybe not the case with others around him. What are you feeling with others around him that might not be giving you the opportunities that you need?
Well, I think that a lot of people just follow the trends of other broadcasters and other production companies. We got to get younger. We got to get, more mobile. We got to get everything's got to be young. Hollywood value.
Let me just say this. I wish that WWE would take that getting younger approach to the whole roster from top to bottom. I'd say don't bring Undertaker back. I'd say give Cena maybe one more year as a wrestler, because Cena is not as good as he once was. He's very rusty. You can see that he's aging, and you can see that he's lost a lot of his greatness. He's lost a lot of his greatness. Who else is getting up there? Oh, Make sure Triple H is retired after WrestleMania this year. Him and Batista. Don't bring Del Rio back. I know that's been a topic for a lot of people over the last couple of days, especially on Twitter. I've seen the rants. Don't bring Del Rio back. Not because of his personal problems and how he is as a real life human being. I don't give two shits about that. I care about the fact that he's older and he was a slightly above average wrestler at best. That's it. At this point, they just don't need Del Rio. For what? They're not going to push him anyway. Even if they do bring him back, they're not going to push him. Because last time they brought him back, they literally promised him that he would be back in the main event and he would get another world championship run. And he got none of those things. So, no need to bring Del Rio back. He's old anyway. Andrade is what's hot. Give Rey Mysterio like one more year, maybe two. Depending on... Judging by his performances lately, he could go another 2 years. But after that, get him out of here. Because Rey is old too. He's almost 30 years in wrestling, into the sport. He's got to go. And I love Rey Mysterio to death. This isn't me bashing him. This isn't me shitting on him. I love Rey to death. I'm one of his biggest fans. He's one of the most inspirational wrestlers of all time, and the greatest little man of all time. No doubt about it. Get rid of him. Just get rid of everybody that's getting old. Get rid of everybody that's 40 and up. We got enough developing talent in NXT and NXT UK and at the Performance Center who are much younger, much more athletic, and much more ready to get to that next level.
Use look and youth well above experience and talent. I think sometimes that may be applicable in my case, but I still believe I can carry my share of the water, and hopefully those opportunities will come around sooner than later.
Now you stepped away.
And here's where the JR going to AEW. This is where those rumors begin, right here. JR's going to AEW.
A somewhat in 2013 reduced. Now you're stepping away for good from the WWE. What's the difference between then and now?
Well, then I was taken out of the game by the coach. The old deal, when you look at a box score, it says did not play, coach's decision, or something along those lines. That's kind of what I saw that as. It was a way of phasing me out. But in 2018, Vince took great care of me, as he always has financially. I had two bookings in 2018. So I kind of felt the writing was on the wall. Duh, you know, us Okies are not that dumb. So I just felt like it was time to move on and do it in a graceful and a professional manner.
You mentioned the relationship with Vince McMahon.
But the thing is that I don't know how graceful this is. Just doing it on a random ESPN interview. I don't know how graceful that is. I mean, it's formal, but graceful? I don't know. If anything, I feel like he should call WrestleMania one more time this year. I think that the WWE should try to coax him into calling WrestleMania one more time. I would be down for that. Especially for Kurt Angle's final match. Because he called Kurt Angle's first match at Survivor Series 99 when he wrestled Shawn Stasiak. I believe, yeah, JR called that pay-per-view. So it would just, I think it would be a special moment. I would be down for that.
And that was good. What did he say to you when you told him, hey, I'm leaving for good?
Well, he wasn't overwhelmed with that decision, but he understood the opportunities out there, the financial opportunities, the rejuvenating aspect of these opportunities to get back in the game, get back in the hunt. You know, I'm not buying into this damn stuff about, well, you know, you're a Medicare guy, you're an AARP guy. What's that matter? I don't even wear a watch half the time because I don't even want to know what time it is. I'm living every day.
I mean, well, JR, I doubt that. I mean, whoever's saying that, they must really have some personal grudge against you because, I mean, didn't Marv Albert call basketball games until he was in his 70s? I could have sworn Marv Albert like recently retired, not even 10 years ago. So what's the difference between him and JR? And Marv is older. So I don't know who's saying that to him, but all right.
As the best I can to its fullest, and Vince understood that. I said, Vince, if anybody can understand wanting to stay in the game, it's you. So I'm looking forward to every day. But I've had such joy working for WWE. My God, 26 years is an eternity in that world.
What's the moment that will stand out to you the most as, man, that was the best moment I had?
Wow, that's a tough one. I think probably The Rock and Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 18. That was a great one. The Mick Foley Hell in a Cell match with Undertaker is the most memorable because I get asked about it pretty much every day. And I used
how pissed off JR was during that match. I have seen that match several times, and every time I see it, I get goosebumps on top of goosebumps, because JR, you could just feel his passion and you could feel his energy, and it's probably at least top 3 of the greatest matches that he's ever called in his entire career.
From my stage shows, I'm getting ready to do 3 stage shows in New York City during WrestleMania week, and that's one of the stories we tell is about that night that we were not aware was going to happen. And those are always the very best moments. I think people overestimate that we know more than we do, or the storyline. We get a script, you say this, you say that. It never worked like that for me. I never got a script. I never got told what to say to any degree.
All right, you talk about the opportunities coming up. There have been reports about where you're going next. What say you about that?
Well, I haven't signed anything with anybody.
Are you going to AEW next?
I don't know.
See, I literally just said that not even 5 minutes ago. Oh my God. Let the AEW rumors commence.
We're talking. I just haven't signed anything yet. My people and their people are doing their thing, and the only agent I grew up knowing was a State Farm agent in Oklahoma. I got a real agent now, man. So they're working on that. They're working on it. I'd like to get them some voiceover work. I'd like to do some, I wouldn't mind having a radio gig doing college football.
I'll tell you what, we are looking forward to seeing where you go next. And Jim, we thank you so much for the time. Thank you.
You bet, Ryan. Thank you, buddy.
Alright, so that was it for that video. ESPN Outside the Lines, interviewing good old JR, WWE Hall of Famer Jim Ross. He is personally my favorite commentator of all time, not just in wrestling but in all of sports. He's called some boxing fights before. I want to say he called one MMA event. It wasn't a UFC event, of course. It was one of the local events, but I believe they had one of them in Fight Pass. One of you peeps can correct me if I'm wrong on that. Could have sworn he called an MMA event before. He's called college football games. I think he called a college basketball game as well. JR has literally done it all in the sports world, and I have nothing but a huge amount of respect for him, and I would like to see where he went next. And I'm sure that wherever he goes next, he will approach it the same way he's approached any other gig in his entire career. He's gonna go all out, balls to the wall, and make the most of it, because that's what Jared does. He's the best. He's the best. To me, the greatest commentator ever. So I'm out.